What if burnout and feeling stuck is actually the static of your soul? A frequency mismatch where your nervous system just can't tune out. I've done that, so tired that a good 8 hours of sleep won't help. It feels like chronic fatigue. This is going deeper than just too many hours. That's what they tell us. Or being busy. Sometimes I could work 12 hours and feel energized, and other days 4 hours would completely knock me out. Same body, same business, but different energy output. Amsterdam University tracked 348 entrepreneurs, and what came up was alignment determines burnout levels, not hours worked. Surprise, surprise. So what if my body was trying to tell me something? People who are being someone they're not get blasted with cortisol spikes during the day. That's a fight or flight stress response right there. The same hormone released when you're being chased by a predator, except there's no predator anymore. What an energy leak. No wonder a holiday doesn't do anything, because you take your misalignment with you wherever you go. If you're one of those entrepreneurs who feels unfulfilled and drained despite your success, your body has been trying to tell you something that no productivity expert actually talks about. Most entrepreneurs, I put my hand up here as well, create what I call version 147 of themselves. This strategic, polished persona designed to attract success and manage perception, not being judged. In my last video, I shared the whole story about version 147. It's definitely worth watching after this. I leave the link in the description for you. So we craft this perfect social media post, present carefully designed versions of ourselves to come across professional and impressive. And it looks shiny on the outside, but energetically, it's quite incongruent. Your nervous system reads this performance as a threat. Under the surface, your body recognizes the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be. It's like wearing clothes that just don't fit. You can function, but every movement requires extra energy. Every time I performed, instead of simply being present, I could feel this tension in my chest, in my shoulders, breathing shallow, heart rate goes up. Every moment I abandon my authentic self gets recorded. I was in a conversation with a potential client. The energy was magic, everything was alive, flowing, beautiful. We were both completely present, and I could feel this authentic connection happening, I thought, until he said something that stopped me in my tracks. He said, "Frank, I love all of this, but I don't want you to be my coach. I want you to be here with me as Frank." I sat there feeling like someone had just dumped a bucket of ice-cold water over me. Whoosh. Speaking about authenticity, and I couldn't even show up as myself fully in this enrollment conversation. I wanted to crawl under the table, disappear. I didn't even know I was doing it until he called me out. This is exactly where most people get stuck. They recognize the pattern but don't know how to actually recalibrate. That's why I created my private Telegram circle. Raw transmissions that clear all the static you've been carrying. No content strategy, no positioning, just pure frequency that appears and vanishes after 24 hours. Your nervous system already knows. The link is below. I was performing Frank, the coach, the guide, the space holder, whatever label you want to put there, it doesn't even matter. Without being aware that I lost track where the performance ended and where I began. And I remember sitting on the terrace in silence after the call, thinking, how long have I been doing this? How many conversations did I have where I wasn't even fully present? Part of me felt like a fraud. And that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every recent conversation, wondering, was I being Frank or performing Frank? The line was so distorted, I honestly couldn't tell anymore. And that's not even funny. Now, if I can't tell the difference, how exhausted must my nervous system be trying to maintain this performance 24/7? The survival mode was bleeding into everything. Business decisions filtered through fear instead of clarity. Conversations with my partner where I wasn't fully present, emotionally unavailable because, well, a part of me was still in this performance mode. Even my creative work felt forced instead of flowing through me because, well, a part of me was trying to manage perception, prove something, and guard from potential harm. My body was literally treating inauthenticity like a survival threat. Your heart rate variability drops when you operate inauthentically. Your digestion slows down. These are not small inconveniences. This is your nervous system telling you something is really off. A study from Harvard gives this even more energy because it says that this kind of misalignment literally creates disease, autoimmune disorders, heart conditions, you name it. Your soul static is exhausting you, that's one thing, but it's also breaking down your body at a cellular level. This is scary. Every client call where you say what you think they want to hear rather than what you actually think. That's people pleasing, by the way. Every social media post crafted to impress rather than express yourself fully. Every business decision filtered through fear instead of this inner knowing we all have access to. This misalignment creates nervous system dysregulation that no amount of sleep or productivity hack can fix. And the more successful version 147 becomes, where you edit your true self out, the more disconnected you feel from your own life and business. I remember the day when I achieved my first 100K month. I should have been celebrating, but instead I sat in the garden by myself, cried. Like a full body cry that came out of nowhere. I had everything I thought I wanted and felt absolutely nothing. Worse than nothing. I felt like I was looking through someone else's life through a window. You could say the entire game was rigged against authenticity. The money was real, the clients were happy, really beautiful souls, but I still felt like a ghost in my own success. I lost myself. Which immediately reminded me when I was a ghost producer. I was convinced that something is wrong with me because how do you explain to someone that achieving your goals feels empty inside? How do you say, I built exactly what I wanted and it feels like my own prison without sounding completely ungrateful? I was building my success as someone I'm not. Every dollar felt meaningless because it came from a version of me I created to be marketable and liked. Literally, I was getting paid to be someone else, and even that mask I was wearing was getting tired of that performance. That's success depression, really. Achieving goals that don't actually fulfill you because they require you to abandon your true self. You're successful on paper but exhausted in your soul. If we listen deep enough, we know this is true. You start questioning everything. Was it worth it? Is it really what I wanted? After journaling more than 30 pages, I knew all this fragmentation, it's a survival mechanism I developed to protect myself from what felt like threats to a younger version of me. Fear of rejection, worry about being judged, that deep belief that the real me is not good enough to succeed, worthy of love, deserving. Even though those years of performing all these different versions of Frank felt exhausting, they taught me to recognize authentic frequency when I feel it. I had to experience this static to appreciate the clarity I have now. Because of this contrast, I can now summon the gifts that are uniquely mine, the ones I was trying to edit out. The vulnerability and sensitivity I was hiding is what creates deep connection, trust, and a beautiful level of leadership. The rawness I thought was unprofessional is what people actually respond to. Truth. Stories I was carrying for years. And what's crazy is how these beliefs literally shaped my identity based on things that were not even true. Instead of trusting what feels right, these personas analyzed everything and went against my intuitive knowing to prove it wrong. Totally ego-based. And that's when people-pleasing comes online. Big time. You even start buying into the idea that this edited version is who you need to be to succeed. It feels empty because it's created by someone you're not. It's insane how these protective masks become so automatic that you forget what your authentic voice even sounds like. It went so far that there were moments where my partner looked at me like, "Who are you talking to right now?" We were just chatting about her day, normal things, and I started responding like she was a potential client, using my coach voice, asking strategic questions in my own freaking kitchen, talking to the woman I love at home. The look on her face, it was like she was literally talking to a stranger. And she was, kind of. I was even performing authenticity in my most intimate relationship. That's how far this went. I stood there holding my coffee mug, feeling completely exposed. I didn't really know who I was anymore. I tried to switch back to regular Frank, but I couldn't find him. The mask had been on so long, I forgot what my actual face felt like. She just looked at me with a mix of sadness and concern that felt like, "I miss you." And I knew exactly what she meant, because I missed myself as well. I was so busy being who I thought I needed to be that I disappeared from my own life. And society teaches us this is normal. That's when I knew I had to bring Frank back, the real Frank, starting somewhere, facing my demons, walking right in. That's really uncomfortable, but I couldn't keep living as a ghost of myself while not embodying to be authentic. So I started where it hurt the most. I started looking what I was hiding. I had to face the parts of myself I rejected. What if I was hiding was exactly what people needed to see? Well, my nervous system already knew the answer, pointing me to help me remember who I am before all this strategic learning. I just didn't trust enough or paid attention. And gaining a deeper understanding of what was actually happening, I was thinking, I'm literally making myself sick trying to be this perfect entrepreneur that doesn't even exist. I was draining my life force trying to build a business while neglecting my life. My body was going for a full-on rebellion against the person I was pretending to be, and I kept trying to medicate the symptoms instead of really seeing them as messages. The breaking point was when I woke up one morning and I couldn't feel anything. Not sad, not happy, not excited, not scared, just empty and numb. I made myself feel numb, like this. Like my nervous system finally said, "We're done, we're going offline." I stood in my bathroom staring at this successful entrepreneur in the mirror who looked like he was already dead inside, trying to fill a void. All because of being someone I wasn't, every single day for years. My body was keeping a perfect score of every inauthentic moment. My hearing loss breakdown 10 years ago taught me something I'm still discovering. Your body will always tell you the truth about who you're being, even when your mind refuses to listen. That wake-up call saved my life in ways I'm still discovering, but that's a story for another time. Looking back, that's chronic misalignment. The usual prescription is trying to optimize the wrong variable. That's why I couldn't biohack or schedule myself out of this. I started to realize my nervous system wasn't broken. It was giving me valuable feedback about my energetic alignment or misalignment that I didn't know how to read. And I didn't fully trust my own body's intelligence. But I started paying attention, close attention to the signals, becoming aware. When my chest contracts before saying yes to something, or my voice drops to my solar plexus when I'm being real versus when I'm performing, speaking from my throat. It was like learning a new language, the language of my own body, guiding me back to myself and sustainable energy. And this explains everything. Entrepreneurs working 80+ hours experience less burnout than people working 40 hours, but only when their work felt aligned. Hustle culture got it backwards. They're obsessed with how many hours you work instead of the frequency you're broadcasting, who you're being, the quality of energy behind your actions, thoughts, and emotions while working on those hours. And science knows it. We just get to catch up. When you're operating from, I need to prove I'm enough, even 4 hours feel like survival mode, draining, forced effort, heavy. When you're broadcasting from I'm already enough and this is my authentic expression, 12 hours feel like creation frequency, energizing, flowing, alive. Imagine a musician who can play for hours without getting tired when they're in flow. Time disappears. But when you ask that same musician to play music they don't connect with, they don't really feel, every note becomes work. Every minute feels like an hour. I know exactly what this feels like from my music production background. One of my heroes, producer Rick Rubin, he was facing this exact choice when Johnny Cash recorded Hurt. He could have gone with the polished, technically perfect version, but instead he chose the raw, broken take where you could hear Cash's age, the pain, his authentic emotion. That imperfect version became a massive hit, but it also became legendary. The vulnerability is what made it timeless. And let's pause here for a moment, because I'm not telling you to meditate your way to millions or skip the fundamentals. I've done the content strategies, mapped out client journeys, A/B tested everything. But when your nervous system is in survival mode, even the best strategies feel like pushing a mountain uphill, not just a rock. When you're aligned, the same strategies just flow effortlessly, and you feel it in your body. Quite a ton of entrepreneurs will probably not say this publicly, but they would rather work 80 hours a week on something that's deeply aligned with them than 40 hours on something that drains them. Not that you have to work 80 hours, but it's quite revealing. It's all about energy. I started noticing I was operating from two completely different states, and one of them was absolutely draining me. Most of the time I was in this constant defense mode, even in my relationship. Managing perceptions, avoiding rejection, trying to control every outcome through strategic thinking. Every interaction became like a chess match where I was 3 moves ahead, calculating how to present myself for maximum advantage and minimum harm. My body was treating this like an ongoing threat. Everything tense without me knowing until I become aware. So I started tracking when this would happen. This is interesting. Every client call became a performance where I felt rejection was just waiting around the corner. That's when this survival mechanism started managing the outcome. And because of this, I wouldn't even invite them to work with me based on my assumptions I was making. Insane. Every social media post I would analyze for potential criticism, which sometimes prevented me from sharing. I caught myself switching voices mid-conversation. Client voice, friend voice, partner voice, social media voice. It gets really confusing. Your life force gets scattered around all those different versions of yourself. There's no unified presence, no undivided self showing up consistently. I realized my nervous system was responding like I was in actual danger, or there was potential harm, flooding my system with stress hormones designed to keep me alive during real threats. I was even sweating under my armpits, but there was no real threat. Just me trying to control how the world around me perceived me. It's tough to admit, but that's survival frequency. But I also started noticing moments where something completely different would happen. I would drop into this other state, calm, open presence, where opportunities come alive naturally. Choices and actions I take come from this inner knowing rather than all this fear-based analysis. My breathing would deepen without me even trying. My shoulders drop. And all those strategic voices just quiet down like a fader. I stopped trying to control outcomes and start trusting something that I couldn't really name, leaning into the unknown. When you're in flow, your cortisol drops and your brain literally operates differently. Alpha or even theta brain waves, less stress, pure focus. I could actually track the difference between forcing effort versus when things feel natural, when I was aligned with who I'm being. For me, this is creation frequency. So I was wondering, what if my business could operate from the same frequency, clearing the static, because I was tired of feeling disconnected from my own life. When you're in survival frequency, trying to prove you're enough, managing perceptions, avoiding rejection, you're pushing energy through misalignment. That's why everything feels like effort. But when you shift to creation frequency, operating from I'm already enough, You're not forcing anything, you're directing awareness, and energy follows that direction effortlessly. It all starts with awareness. Energy flows where awareness goes, not force. I'm still learning to read these signals, but they seem to know something my mind doesn't. I've started pausing before client conversations, emails I send, social media posts, and decisions to ask my body what feels aligned versus what feels strategic, what my body wants to say versus what my mind thinks I should say. Just one deep breath, feeling into my chest, connecting with my energy, asking myself, does this feel contracting or expansive? Am I choosing from fear or alignment? Because of this, I actually make decisions faster. My body seems to know before my mind gets to catch up with all this logic. That deeper intelligence is so worth trusting. Your mind is a transmitter. When you're anxious, your thoughts scatter and you're literally broadcasting chaos into the field. When you're calm, grounded, breathing deeper, you're transmitting coherence. Your nervous system is not just managing your internal state, it's constantly communicating with everything around you. People feel your frequency before you speak. Opportunities align or misalign based on what you're broadcasting. And before you think this is some soft, touchy-feely BS, soldiers call this tactical awareness. Athletes call this being in the zone, flow. And business leaders call this gut instinct. It's the same intelligence, your nervous system processing information faster than your conscious mind can analyze it. And we've been trained to override and question everything with pure logic and external impulses that have nothing to do with who we really are. I started saying no to opportunities that require me to be anything other than the real me, even when they seem financially attractive. That's when I declined an $8,000 client because something in my body contracted when I imagined co-creating. My logical mind was screaming about the lost revenue. My nervous system was thanking me for guarding my life force. And the more I choose alignment over what looks good on paper, the more my body seems to trust that authenticity is actually safe. It's like reviving something deep. I give you a few other examples. Avoiding deep conversations, procrastinating on your own dreams, constantly comparing yourself to others, betraying your soul. That's all internal misalignment. When you start choosing alignment over these patterns, people feel the difference immediately. No chasing, no pretending, no forcing, just authentic presence. And that is magnetic. I'm learning to show up as the same Frank in all contexts rather than switching personas based on who I'm with. The energy that was needed to perform becomes available for creation and connection. Whew. When I stay consistent, my nervous system seems to relax. That's the space of undivided presence, and I'm experimenting with it every day. So I'm making choices more and more from my grounded center rather than from external pressure to please, manage perception, control outcomes. Really pausing before saying yes and checking in with my body. When I'm in this space, it feels deeply aligned with my values and who I'm being. I have seen how people try to think their way out of misalignment. I had to realize that for me, it actually requires nervous system recalibration. I had to get better at saying no, energetic boundaries, not just obviously bad things, but to opportunities that look good on paper, but made my chest and stomach contract. This alone guards my life force big time. And I get to trust my inner knowing no matter what. I wanted to show up as the same Frank everywhere, especially when nobody's watching. No more switching voices between my partner and my clients. No more Coach Frank versus regular Frank. Just me. It's felt immediately in the field around me. And it's way less exhausting. So burnout is not a sign that something is wrong with me. It's been calling me back to my authentic frequency this entire time. All beautiful messages to decode and opportunities to heal and grow. You don't need to earn this power. You were meant to remember it. This doesn't mean becoming someone new or achieving some advanced state of consciousness. This authentic frequency is your natural baseline. How you felt before the world taught you to edit yourself. You were not born needing to prove your worth or manage perception. That's all learned behavior, survival mechanisms you developed to protect yourself. But you don't need those protections anymore, not with the awareness you have today. Everything that's calling you is in the description below. I want to invite you to share what shifted in your body while watching this. Your nervous system recognizes truth before your mind can process it. Subscribe for more transmissions that cut through the static of strategic living. Share this with someone whose soul is tired from performing success instead of living it. Your body already knows the way back to sustainable energy. That's what you get to trust. Thank you for being here. Much love. I share more of these real-time discoveries in my private Telegram circle. Raw transmissions that appear and vanish. No content strategy, just pure frequency. The link is below for you to enter. I'd love to see you there.